Yo, what's the deal? It's Master Clee back with another video. Appreciate y'all being here. Today, I really just want to talk about curing laziness. As I've transitioned into my new space, I've realized how much laziness plays a factor into our direct success or unsuccess. Laziness is one of those things that are deeply rooted in human nature. I believe we are wired to be lazy unless it's meant for our survival. Us as humans obviously have our brain, and our brain innately is wired to survive. And so a lot of times when we're trying to change our life around and transform, get into a new state of mind, get into a new state of being, make more money, get a better job, have a nicer body, things of that nature, if it is not threatening our survival, then naturally we may feel unmotivated to do it. Now, I've always wondered why that is. Like, why is it that us humans are naturally unmotivated or naturally just lazy? And it's that very fact that if it's not life-threatening, then we will remain lazy. If we never had to fear starving, right? Like if we never got hungry, we would probably have never gone to hunt. Right, I'm talking about in our primal days. But because starvation is life-threatening and our minds are wired to survive, we understand that if we don't eat, we will die. We understand that staying in the house and not going to work on your body, or not reading, or not writing, or not focusing on self-development traits are not life-threatening, it's going to be very hard to stay motivated to do those type of things. So I really want to talk about the cure of laziness and what's really worked for me and what I think has worked for the endless amount of other people who have had an extreme amount of success. People like Kevin Hart, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, your favorite athletes like Bron, MJ, Kobe, Serena Williams, Simone Biles, just all these amazing athletes who have had to overcome this laziness deficit. Again, us humans, we're all naturally wired to be lazy because some of those things that we're going after are not life-threatening. You having a fit body is not necessarily life-threatening yet, but later on in life, if you remain to have a unhealthy lifestyle, you are deteriorating your body, whether you realize it or not. But because it's not life-threatening in the moment, it's very hard for us to focus on anything other than what's going to survive us right now. So I say all that to say, let's get into how to cure laziness. I'm somebody who used to be really lazy. I just didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to do anything that required a whole lot of energy. I didn't want to do anything that made me have to do something that I thought was going to be boring. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hated being bored, especially as a kid. Like, being bored was the worst. But as an adult, I started to realize that a lot of the boring things are really some of the most rewarding things. Going to the gym, I don't find it extremely fun, right? Going to the gym and working out, it's not very fun, right? It's painful. It hurts, to be frank. But you feel so good afterwards. What's really hard is getting into that state of mind before going to the gym, right? Like building up the energy to get there. Because honestly, once you're there, like, it's cool, right? It's pretty simple. You know that you're gonna work out. You're not gonna want to squat. You're not gonna want to bench. You're not gonna want to deadlift, and you're just gonna do it anyway because you're already there. Getting to the gym is the hardest part. For me, growing up, I was always so lazy. I just did not want to do anything. And I used to beat myself up. I thought something was wrong with me because I used to see people on social media who would do this, and that, and have this type of structure in their days, and they were this disciplined. I just didn't understand, like, how do they have the energy to do all of this? I honestly thought that I was just somebody that was a slacker, and I just thought that, like, it just wasn't for me, right? Because I didn't find any joy in doing any of it, right? I didn't feel motivated to go to the gym. I didn't feel motivated to eat healthy. I didn't feel motivated to work on myself and read and improve my mind. And maybe you felt some of the same things, right? Maybe you feel like maybe something might be wrong with you, or you see people on TV who are super motivated and who work this amount of time, and you just don't understand how they're able to do that. Well, today I kind of want to just help give the recipe to curing laziness. So really by the end of this video, you'll see where laziness really comes from, and you'll have at least one strategy you can use today to start breaking free. So without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, what is the definition of laziness? Okay, so laziness is the reluctance to put in effort even when you know what you should do. I think a lot of times with laziness, it goes hand in hand with procrastination. So sometimes we feel lazy in the moment, and then we want to put a task off, and we don't ever get back around to it because we procrastinated it because we felt lazy in the first place. Understand, procrastination simply is just really delaying tasks, right? Often because of fear, often because of lack of energy or motivation, or really just feeling overwhelmed. And I saw a statistic that said that 20 to 25% of adults are chronic procrastinators. I was one of them. I always procrastinated. Anytime I had something major that I needed to get done, I always wanted to put it off, mostly because it was overwhelming, but probably a little bit of fear as well, like just not knowing what the outcome would be, whether that was trying to get a fit body and get in shape, whether that was applying for a new job, whether that was hell, even enrolling into school. Like, it took me forever to roll into college. Like, I was overwhelmed. Like, the FAFSA applications, are you kidding me? Applying for schools, paying that fee, like, come on, I didn't want to do any of that. So I always procrastinated. What I started learning about laziness and procrastination and how they go hand in hand is that what you believe about yourself will lead to honestly how you feel. I made a video a few weeks ago that said the interconnection between behavior and belief. And a lot of times we put these labels on ourselves, or we hold these identities like, I'm just not a very motivated person, or I'm just not a morning person, or I'm just not a healthy person. I just don't eat healthy. Well, if you start to put these labels onto yourself, then you will act in accordance to these labels that you place on yourself. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them, like my guy Myron Golden says. Understand that those beliefs directly shape your behavior. So it's important to re-identify yourself when you're trying to get out of this lazy spirit, right? You're not a lazy person. You're not a procrastinator, and you need to claim that. A lot of times we avoid action because of fear of the unknown, fear of the outcome, or just straight up your fear of failure. I think a lot of times too, that fear kind of ties into not knowing where to start. You know, if you're somebody who wants to pick up a habit of reading, obviously you know that all it takes is to read a book, but there's a lot of overwhelm that comes with that, even if it's just subtle, like going to buy the book, right? Going to find a bookmark, and we start making all these excuses in our head, and then eventually we just don't do it, right? If we know that we want to get back into the gym, trying to decide a gym to go to, right? Trying to go at a right time where you're not going to get nervous or anxious around a lot of people. All of those things start to compound, and eventually we procrastinate and put it off, and we never get around to it. And then because we have that initial fear of starting, right, of not knowing where to start, it also starts to become overwhelming. Overwhelm kills action. Being overwhelmed really kills action. And honestly, laziness is often a symptom of just feeling overwhelmed and having lack of clarity. So today, I really just want to help somebody get over those feelings of overwhelm, get over the feelings of procrastination, get over the lack of clarity of not knowing where to start and things of that nature, so you can live your life by design and not by default. Everything that you want is on the other side of laziness, you know, is on the other side of not being lazy. If you can overcome laziness, you can overcome anything, in my opinion. Everybody that you've seen that has had an enormous amount of success have always overcame the spirit of laziness. Think about your favorite actors. Think about your favorite musicians, right? Like musicians or writers, you know, they go through writer's blocks. Like, there's so many examples of people getting over the spirit of laziness and doing the things that they don't want to do. Laziness is the most detrimental habit that one could ever hold. So today we're gonna break out of that spirit of laziness, and I'm gonna teach you step by step how to get over that laziness, okay? Before we do that, like, let's just think about what laziness has cost us. It costs time, it costs us regret, it causes us missed opportunities, whether that's money, relationships, growth potentials. It costs us a lot of mental weight. Laziness causes a lot of mental weight. Things like guilt, things like fear, things like anxiety, anxiousness, and I would say low self-esteem. When I think about my laziest times in my life, I also had an enormous amount of low self-esteem. I think there's a direct correlation between laziness and self-esteem. When you know that you're on your shit, when you know that like you get into it, that self-esteem starts to grow and you start to feel better about yourself. When you have a spirit of laziness, you know, you don't feel too good about yourself because you know that there's things that you should be doing that you're not doing. You know, laziness causes a lot of stress because there's procrastination. We know that there's things that we need to do that we haven't done, and that causes stress and anxiety. So if you could cure laziness, think about how much of a boulder you would be able to get off of your chest. Think about how much of a weight that you hold that you would be able to release, right? That spirit of laziness has to die, and we're gonna kill it today. I'm about to teach you exactly how to kill that spirit of laziness. All right, so let's start with number one. Number one, the most important part when it comes to laziness is the belief work. You have to do the belief work first. This is the very first thing that I want each and every single one of y'all to do to overcome this spirit of laziness. I want you to start identifying the lies that you may tell yourself. You know, you may be like, I'm lazy. You may be like, I'm unmotivated. You may be like, I'm not a morning person, things of that nature. I need you to release those. I want you to start countering those with truth. Is it true that you're not a morning person? You've woken up in the morning before. Start providing yourself with evidence. Oh no, I actually did. I had to wake up for, you know, over 6 months. I was working a 6 a.m. to 2 shift, and I was up at 5 o'clock every morning to get to work by 6. Like, sometimes we minimize our own wins because we don't feel like they're big enough. But in reality, you know, if you've had a 7 o'clock shift before, you have to wake up by 6 o'clock. Right? You got to wake up to get ready. That's morning. You're a morning person, right? So claim that. I can give a real big example of this because I was somebody who told myself I wasn't a school person. I averaged a 2.2 GPA in high school. And then I get to college and I started the belief work. I changed my beliefs about myself, and I'm a 4.0 college student. I didn't get anything less than a 4.0, right? I just got my degree that said summa cum laude on my degree. And I'm like, what the hell is summa cum laude? Right? I had to look that up. But anyways, I just changed the belief about who I am. I changed the belief and the identity that I had that I'm not a school person. I am a school person. I'm going to do this. And that's the only thing that changed between that 2.2 GPA in high school and that 4.0 in college. So that's really where we need to start, is the belief work. Okay, let's move on. Okay, number two, really big. And James Clear, one of my favorite authors from my favorite book, Atomic Habits, he talks about tiny wins and tiny actions. So the second thing that I want you to focus on is just the micro wins, right? The micro actions and the micro wins. That's the second thing that I want to talk about. And I want to talk about this because anytime we're trying to transform and change our life, we believe that we have to make this super big shift. Let's say that you want to start eating healthy, right? Because you want a fit body. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to go get on the biggest crash diet. You want to go be plant-based, right? After 20 plus years, 2 decades of not eating healthy at all, you want to go ahead and start eating healthy, right? And so what you do is you like, I'm gonna be plant-based. And so you go to the store, you buy the stuff, and for 2 days you doing it and you rocking it, and it is great. But that third day, that body is like, yo, I need some meat, right? Pause. I need some meat. Pause. Right? And then you start craving these foods that you've been eating your whole life. That is too big of a dramatic shift, right? For people that are trying to change their life around, you don't want to give yourself whiplash while trying to propel yourself forward, right? You may be going forward just a little too fast. So pump the brakes a little bit. This is why number two is extremely important. Micro goals, micro actions. If you're somebody who wants to start eating healthy, start by just having a salad with your dinner every single day, right? Okay, I'm gonna start with the salad. I'm still gonna eat my breakfast, I'm gonna eat my lunch, but I'm gonna start making a salad with my dinner every single day, regardless of the fact. Try that for a week. And then slowly start implementing more things. I'm gonna start having a fruit with every meal now, on top of my salad. things of that nature. You don't want to make a super dramatic shift because it's going to be unattainable. We talk about SMART goals on here a lot. You know, it's important that you're making those SMART goals so that you are keeping the momentum when you're heading in the right direction. Too big of a target could discourage you and you might not want to even try again. So it's really important that you think about that, okay? Understand that small wins stack into big ones. They compound, right? You have 5 small wins now, then you have 10, and you have 15. And the next thing you know, you're at 50 just based on little wins. So just start small, right? We use the healthy example. The same thing with the gym. If you're trying to go to the gym, just try to go a couple days a week. Don't try and say, I'm going to go every single day the whole next month. This is why New Year's resolutions don't really work, because people set too big of expectations on their goals and they don't end up hitting them, and then they get discouraged, and then that's a wrap, right? So keep that in mind. All right, so number 3, I think this one is really important. You want to design the right environment. You want to make things easy for yourself. You want to remove distractions. You want to get around people that are on the same journey as you. You want to be around people who are just as dedicated to hitting their goals as you are. It's very tough to be the only person in your friend group that wants to change their life, right? Because as you're trying to climb, they're gonna keep pulling you back down. If you're somebody who's trying to stop drinking, it's very difficult if all your friends are going to bars every weekend and inviting you out, right? That's a recipe for disaster. So you got to create the right environment so that you can succeed. A lot of times too, with creating the right environment, is you want to force yourself to make the right decisions, right? You don't want to rely on willpower. If you're somebody who's wanting to stop eating chips and eating junk food, in order for you to not rely on that willpower, you can't have that stuff in your pantry or easy access, right? We talked about not making super dramatic shifts. Okay, if you still want to have some food in there, then make it difficult for you to access the food. Put it on the super top cabinet that you have, or leave it in the car. You know, I remember when I was trying to be more disciplined while I was in school and working full time on the way to get my degree, and I wanted to stop playing the game as much, right? And so I challenged myself. I was like, okay, I'm only gonna play the game on weekends. And in order for me to do that, out of sight means out of mind. So I didn't want to rely on my willpower. So what I did is I left my controllers in the car, right? I left my controllers in my vehicle because I couldn't play the game without a controller. And I lived at my parents' house at the time in a basement, and so I used to park on the street, and so I knew that if I wanted to play the game, I would have to bring it in from the car, and that's a long walk. And so during the week, that was really simple because I never saw my controller, which means it never made me feel like I had to play the game right then and there, right? And so don't rely on willpower. Create the right environment so that you can succeed. All right, moving on to the next point is accountability and tracking your metrics. This is a big one. You know, being able to hold yourself accountable is really important to overcome this spirit of laziness. I think the best way to hold yourself accountable and really track your progress is to do it publicly, right? Do it publicly. Like, tell your friends about it. Tell your peers about it. Tell your colleagues about whatever new venture you're trying to be on. For this specifically, trying to be not lazy, in order to hold yourself accountable is like, yo, post. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm holding myself accountable. I said I'm gonna post a video every single week for 52 weeks and we're gonna see where we're at. And that's what I'm doing. Now, I haven't hit that goal necessarily every week, but I am still holding myself accountable and doing the best that I can to track my progress. You could use, habit trackers, right? If you're somebody who needs some extra support, feel free to join the Discord. We have a whole community where we hold each other accountable. I got to do a better job of being more active in there for sure. But ultimately, you got to be able to hold yourself accountable and track your progress. That's the only way that you can really measure how you're doing. And then last but not least, number 5 is just rest and recover. I think a lot of times laziness has a lot to do with sleep deprivation. We could be behind on sleep. We could not be sleeping well. We could not be getting the rest that we need. And so we feel tired in times where we need to really get stuff done. Understand that burnout and fatigue all come from lack of sleep and lack of clarity and brain fog. Understand that having the proper rest and the proper mental breaks gives you the stamina that it takes to get stuff done, especially when you don't want to do them. When you're well rested and you have a good mind, when you're well rested and have more clarity and not as much brain fog because you have slept well, you're more inclined to get stuff done, unless you're just an absolute animal like Kobe. Kobe always had problems sleeping. And he used to say, hey, I'm gonna just go to this gym since I can't sleep. His workouts are crazy. I actually think I'm gonna do that as a challenge in the future. Stay tuned for that. But that's it. Those are the 5 ways that I have been able to cure my laziness, and I hope that you guys can do the same. Again, feel free to join the Discord if you're somebody who needs some extra support. Again, this called Men of Mastery is really for my fellas who are really just trying to turn their life around and transform. You know, I want everybody to live their life by design and not by default. And yeah, without further ado, I'll see y'all on the next one. Be easy.